All right, everyone. Welcome once again to the Faces of Business. I am your host, Damon Pistolka, and I am excited for our guest today because I've got none other than Humza Adam here today. And we're going to be talking about critical B2B sales systems and processes. Humza, thanks for being here today.
It's great to be here, Damon. I've been really excited, looking forward to it.
Yeah, so good, so fortunate that we could arrange and have you on here today. So I just want to. There's one thing when I was preparing for this, I said you've been or had hands-on, touched, helped to influence over $5 billion in sales.
Right.
So I just want to bring that up for people to listen to it because that's more than there's a lot more zeros than usual on that number. So let's
Yeah.
start out.
There's a bit of a story behind that, but go ahead, Damon.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. Let's hear the story first, then we'll get going.
Yeah. So just in terms of my background, so I've worked in different industries from telecom all the way to aerospace.
Yeah.
And when you're wondering where does those kind of numbers come from, well, when I was working in the aviation industry, I was working for an aircraft manufacturer. And I was basically in the business of selling and marketing airplanes to airlines all around North America. So Canada and US and a little bit into Latin America as well, but mostly into the North American market. Basically, the big names in Canada are WestJet and Air Canada. Down south in the U.S., I had Delta, United, American, Southwest.
Oh, wow.
Some names you might recognize there.
Yeah.
Basically, I was involved in marketing and selling all our product lines of airplanes. And each of these airplanes is worth in the tens of millions of dollars.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And especially when you're selling in North America, you're not selling one or two airplanes, right? You're selling fleets of airplanes, right? So you're getting into numbers like 20, 30, 50, sometimes well over 100, right?
Yeah.
That's the way those numbers add up real fast.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. Well, that's awesome because I think, from those experiences and your experiences now, you in HFactor Solutions, where you're helping people in sales, you've got a lot of experience putting real world solutions into place to help people sell more.
Exactly. That's the whole idea.
Yeah. So let's talk about your background a little bit because you have a master's in engineering management. Now, you don't typically see someone with that degree going into sales, but what really pulled you into the sales career path?
Yeah. So, well, part of my background is actually also aviation. I had a master's based on what they call human factors, getting into the safety side of aviation. And I actually did a little bit of work on accident investigation, which was interesting.
Wow.
And then I decided that, did I want to get an MBA or not? And I said, look, I have a very strongly technical mind. And I want to be able to leverage that. And so I ended up deciding to go ahead and get a master's in engineering management out of Florida Tech eons ago now. Basically, the whole idea was I want to be able to work with businesses and develop a career in different capacities. And I actually worked in different areas in many different businesses. I worked in the operations and supply management side, a big telecom company for a while. And then I had a bit of a hankering to get back to aviation. And so I started attending a few conferences. At one of the conferences, I met with the VP of marketing at one of the big airline aircraft manufacturers. And we got to talking, and he thought my background was really interesting. And one thing led to another, and they hired me on as part of the sales and marketing team. Now, I did have some sales experience in other areas as well, which they thought was useful, but also my aviation background and my understanding of the industry was pretty relevant. So that's kind of what kicked it off for me in terms of B2B selling in a very big way.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. So what do you think are some of the more unique aspects when we look at B2B sales, and especially B2B sales that are in more technical, higher ticket, longer term sales processes?
Mm. Yeah. So what I often see there is, and I see this across the board in many different types of organizations I work with. And so I developed a bit of a methodology to be able to help these companies out. So what I typically see is the way you can picture it is you can picture a triangle, and at the apex of the triangle you have strategy. Okay, so that's at the top end of your triangle. Okay, on the right hand corner of this triangle you have your systems and processes. Okay, and on the left-hand corner, you have your people, or what I would call your talent side of the equation. Okay. And very critically, you want to make sure that in the center of your triangle is your ideal client, your best clients, all right, are in the center of the triangle. Okay. Now, and the reason you want to look at it that way is that none of these aspects, strategy or systems and processes or the people side of your business, should be functioning in a vacuum, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's a recipe for all kinds of problems,
Yeah.
right? They
Yes.
all need to be centered around the customer, right? The client, right? And what are we trying to help this client accomplish with all the different things that we do, with all the capabilities that we have? How are we going to improve the lives or the businesses of the people that we work with and work for, right? Because without customers, there is no business,
Yes.
right? And this is one of the challenges that I see is that people often lose sight of that, right? They either
Yes.
focus on, here's our strategy, here's our vision, this is what we want to do, right? And it has nothing to do with their customers, right? Who they're there to serve, right? Or they build processes, and the processes are not connected to either the strategy, right, or the talent side of the equation, or even the customer side of the equation, right? Sometimes people and businesses build processes to make things easier for themselves and not to improve things for their customers. We should be thinking about making things easier and frictionless and better for our customers, our prospects, our clients, right? Giving
Mm-hmm.
them an amazing experience all the way through, right? And this is something that I often find is missing, when a lot of organizations, because they just don't really think about it in this way, right?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. So that brings up a great point. So when you're out talking to B2B companies, how many of them do you think really make it easy for a customer to do business with them?
I would say, in my experience, it would be less than 20%, right?
Yeah.
Because I find that a lot of businesses, well, some of them, they start off and they're very customer centric in the early phases because, well, they need to go out there and they need to touch the customer, and you have the leadership is very much in tune with what does the customer want, what do we need to
Mm-hmm.
build for them, right? How do we need to create this to create good value, right? How are we going to sell it? Oftentimes, you have the founders themselves are involved in the
Yeah.
selling activities, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
you have a very good, connection with the end customer, right? But what happens over time is as you grow, you add those layers, and the people at the top get very disconnected from what's going on at the front line with the customers, with the clients, and then you start getting all these bureaucratic things creeping in
Mm-hmm.
that do nothing right? And not
Yeah.
only do they do nothing, they might actually do, be a detractor or have a negative impact on the whole customer experience, right? On
Yes.
the whole client experience, right? So I see this as a pretty big gap, which is what I, obviously, that's a big part of what I do, is try and help them kind of navigate and close that gap and understand the importance of really shifting the focus from, our internal focus to a focus on who are we here to serve.
Yeah. Yep. So when you look at B2B sales, what do you think most companies are missing?
I would say, from my perspective, we go back to the triangle.
Yeah.
What I often see missing is that sometimes if they have a strategy, the strategy is not well thought out. Okay, it's not an effective strategy for what they're trying to accomplish. In other cases, it is their systems and processes are basically not designed for with a connection to the strategy, and in terms of what are we trying to accomplish here, in terms of the customer experience in all phases of the sales cycle, right? And that includes the pre-purchase experience. That includes the marketing activities. What is the marketing experience that the customer is going to have, the prospect's going to have, right? Once they start engaging, once we engage with them, right? What does the sales experience look like, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is there congruence between how we're positioning ourselves in the market and how they're being interacted with, and the messaging that they're receiving throughout, right? And then what is the purchase experience like, right? How easy are we making it for them to buy, right? There's an old saying that I like that says, people hate to be sold, but they love to buy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes with salespeople, they are trying to sell, right? They're not thinking about what is the customer's perspective on this and where is the buyer in their journey, right?
Mm-hmm.
So typically in B2B organizations, you will have the salespeople, they have their sales funnel and their CRM, the pipeline. These are the stages, and they're focused on, okay, how do we get this prospect from this stage to this stage, and move them from this stage to this stage? How do we push them through, right, as fast as possible?
Mm-hmm.
And in my mind, while your sales process is important, right, what's even more important than that is the customer's journey, right? So you need to think about, where is the customer in their journey, right? Have they achieved problem recognition, right? Are they dissatisfied with their situation to an extent that they recognize there's a problem and want to go and start figuring out how to solve that problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then moving on to seeking out and doing the research on, okay, how can I solve this problem? Right? This is where all the marketing activities come in, where you need to be visible in a variety of different places with the right types of messaging relevant to the customer, given where they're at. And oftentimes you want to be educating the customer in
Yeah.
the right way, right? And then moving on to the next step in their journey is typically, all right, they come up with a short list of potential vendors that could help them with their problem. And they basically will, in some cases, issue an RFP or a bidding process to basically evaluate between the short list of options that they've put together, right? And there's different information that they would need in that phase, and you have to look at it from their perspective as opposed to from our perspective as the manufacturer
Yeah.
or the creator of the product or service, right? What are they looking to accomplish here, and why are we best suited to help them accomplish that, right? And then helping them in terms of moving to the next step and selecting, hopefully you and your company is the best choice, right? And then working with them through the implementation, through the purchase, through the implementation, making it a great experience all around, so that, in my mind, the way you want all, like everybody in the company be thinking about sales is essentially everybody's job. It's not
Mm-hmm.
just the people in sales' job, right? Because at the end of the day, we all need to help that customer buy a solution that solves their problem, right?
Yep.
And make sure they're well supported in that and are having a great experience with us, because the whole point of sales and marketing is not just to get the sales, right? It's not just about sales. It's more importantly about getting lifelong or lifetime customers, right?
Yes.
Long-lived customers. That's really, the way we want to be thinking about sales. All right, it's not about getting those dollars in the end, right? The cash is good, that's great, right? But what's even more important is to focus on the human element and the people that we are serving, right? And making sure that we're giving them the value that they deserve, right?
Mm-hmm.
And once we start thinking of that way, then we start looking at ways to keep adding value, because the longer the relationship we have with them, the greater the value that we are providing to them.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that pays dividends in many different ways, right? So it pays dividends in terms of the repurchases, the continuation of the contract. It creates opportunities for cross-selling, for upselling,
Yeah.
maybe even for creating whole new product lines to solve new and interesting problems that come up for them. And at the end of the day, right, let's not forget about wonderful things like referrals,
Yeah.
right? So you can get this amazing flywheel effect by having this type of long-term view and focus on building those relationships with the right types of customers, and having that long-term view that everybody in the company shares. It's not just something that senior management is thinking. It's something that everybody is thinking about. How can we give our clients the best experience so they don't think about going anywhere else,
Yeah.
because they feel what we fit them like a glove. Like we know exactly what they need, and we're anticipating what their future needs are, and we're always providing insights and value in every interaction that we have with them, right?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, this is not something that most people naturally are thinking about, right? They're thinking about, okay, got to make the numbers by the end of the quarter, right? What do we need
Yes.
to do? All right, let's push this through. Let's let's see if we can incentivize them with a discount, right? And it's that kind of short-term thinking that I think really muddies the waters a lot,
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't lead to that great, well-nurtured long-term relationship that we'd all love to be able to have.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, you made a great point about these long-term customers, lifelong customers, as you said, because it does give you so many other opportunities for, as you said, cross-selling, upselling, new product lines, new types of business that you can do with them. I mean, I can't tell you how many people that I've seen do that and turn, it could be $1 million customer into a multi tens of millions of dollar customer over time if you do those things right and you're growing with them, and can be very, very good.
Mhm.
So one of the things that I'm seeing in the marketplace now in B2B sales, and just curious, is the role of marketing and in sales, in B2B sales. Do you think that overall, that in manufacturing, where I work an awful lot, grew up in it, really, marketing is still somewhat of a foreign concept. People think they need to do marketing. Most don't do much at all, and still are relying on people in the field with the relationships they're building by knocking on doors, doing the things they do. But do you think that marketing, either digitally or otherwise, is taking a bigger role in the sales process because of people now, the change of buyers? They want to be able to research more. They want to get farther down the buying process. Do you think that that's beginning to affect the B2B sales process a lot more?
Yeah, totally. Because you know now with information available at your fingertips, right?
Yeah.
Um, People are finding it easier and easier to find as much information as they can to get down their buyer's journey to the point where they figured out exactly what they think they want, right?
Mm-hmm.
Without interacting with a salesperson, right? They're already, with some stats say, over 60% of the way through their buying decision, right? Without
Yeah.
having even contacted a real life human being, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, from my point of view, it's even in manufacturing where relationships have traditionally been very important, and I think will continue to be very important.
Yes.
You can't just rely on relationships anymore, right? You have to be able to provide value, right? And a big way or a big component of providing that value is going to be through the marketing activities that you do, right? And what you want to be able to do is you want to be able to lead with insights. You want to be able to share your distinctive point of view, share your differentiation, because for most manufacturers, they aren't the only ones in their industry. There's tons of competition,
Mm-hmm.
right? And as money gets tighter, right, as you know, Damon, we're no longer in the ZERP era, right? Money is no longer free like it used to be, right?
Yeah.
Interest rates are higher, and who knows where they'll be going in the future. But it may be unlikely that we'll have a ZERP for a long time to come, or a zero rate interest rate
Mm-hmm.
scenario for a long time to come. And so what that means is that buying decisions are now, there's a lot more consideration being given to that, right? Because where am I going to get, like, as a business leader, they have to be thinking, where am I going to get the best return
Yeah.
on my money, right? In some cases, it might even be better just to park it in the bank than
Mm-hmm.
risk it on some new initiative, right?
Yeah.
And again, you have to be thinking about how are they looking at this as an opportunity. How are they looking at deploying their critical cash? They're not just going to be wanting to deploy just because they have a great relationship with you. You have to really be able to show them that they're going to be getting a great return with a great company, and they're going to be served very, very well. You want to reduce the risk, which is obviously a big concern.
Mm-hmm.
Reduce the risk of them doing business with you, which again goes back to taking away the friction and making it easy for them to buy and giving them the confidence they need
Yep.
to feel and believe that you are the best solution for them, to get them to where they want to go. So in summary, I would say absolutely, companies that are not doing marketing right now will find themselves behind the eight ball, right? We
Yeah.
are in a global economy, right? You have to be able to compete, and you have to be able to get in there and demonstrate your value. And marketing, I think, would be kind of the first line of being able to penetrate through all the noise. You want to be able to have your marketing assets kind of getting to your potential customers, and starting to build that awareness, build that interest, uh,
Mm-hmm.
and ideally build that desire for them to want to work with you, and then getting the sales, the sales part of your revenue machine in place, so that you're building those relationships while you're also educating the customers, and you're helping them go through their their customer journey successfully, right? And
Mm-hmm.
this is a big thing. You want them to be able to ultimately make a successful purchase, right?
Yes.
And the reason I say that is because there's a stat, I believe it was from Gartner, that said that 57% of B2B purchase decisions end up with no decision, right?
Wow.
So if you just think about that, there's a huge opportunity there, right, for companies who are going to be able to help the customer successfully navigate, which is it's a challenging environment out there. There's lots of competition. There's lots of things
Mm-hmm.
going on, lots of opportunities to deploy uh, what cash they have, uh,
Yeah.
and and, and then there's multiple stakeholders involved, right? So how do you help them navigate all of that in what I call a VUCA world, right? A world where we have lots of volatility, lots of uncertainty, right? Where lots of complexity, lots of
Mm-hmm.
ambiguity, and it's only getting more so, right? So how do you help them navigate that? And we really need to be thinking about it from their perspective and saying, okay, but how are they looking at the world? How can we bring them some insights to help shape their perspective in a way that's going to help them not just now, but also in terms of what's coming down the pipe? How can we help them see around those blind corners? And to be able to do that, you need to obviously be able to get out in front of them even before you have that relationship with them.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you think about it, then you talked about this earlier is the value adding marketing, educating your customers to really show yourself in the light of being an authority, know what you're talking about, been there before, be the one that could really help them if they're in this situation kind of thing. How does that, when you're in a company and you're working with them and they're implementing effective marketing, how does that really change the sales process and effectivity and the whole 9 yards on the sales piece if the marketing is done well?
It has a tremendous impact, right? Because if marketing is done what they need to do and they're doing it really well, then what's happening is that now the buyer is coming in to the interaction with the salesperson already with well informed,
Mm-hmm.
with and having an understanding of what your company is all about, how you are positioned in the market versus the competitors, right? And what value you provide, right? And so the buyer is much further along in their journey, and with an understanding, with a deeper understanding of you and your business and the problems that you solve, right? Which
Yeah.
when that happens, then it makes the job of sales so much easier, right? Because now the buyer is very engaged, very engrossed uh, in the whole process, and really believes that your company seems to be amongst everything, all the other ones out there. Your company seems to be the only one that really truly understands what they need and
Mm-hmm.
understands their situation, right? And when the salesperson gets involved, then that they basically can see that your salesperson has a very deep understanding. So it's not just marketing is doing all the all the legwork, right? Sales also has to come in. There needs to be constant interaction between sales and marketing, right? In
Yep.
terms of communication and alignment. And this is a big challenge I see, is that there's often not that great alignment between sales and marketing. But in a well-functioning organization, you have really good alignment. And so coming in, when sales is coming in and making contact, they already know what kind of content has this particular prospect been consuming, right? What white papers have they downloaded? What case studies have they viewed? What webinars have they attended? right? And so now the salesperson has a very good understanding of what information this prospect has been exposed to, right?
Yeah.
And you don't need to beat around the bush, right? You can
Hmm.
already ask some really good targeted questions to see exactly where they're at in terms of their buyer's journey, and then meet them where they're at and take them from there.
Yeah, that's a great point, because when we talk about sales systems, I think that's one of the things that really can set you apart if you're using the right system, because you just described a situation that I think is probably foreign to many B2B salespeople, by being able to see, I'm going to go meet with Humza, and I know that Humza downloaded these 3 case studies, or viewed those case studies, downloaded this, and responded to this survey or whatever it was. Because most people that are B2B sales and marketing aren't tied in like that. And we might have a CRM over here running, downloading stuff. People are interacting. And when the leads somehow trigger something to meet with a salesperson, they get a meeting set up and that's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what you said and the way you explained that knowledge that they could have ahead of that, when you put that together with a talented salesperson that's going into those meetings, you are light years ahead, because you know how educated they are, and you've heard or seen some of the questions they've been asking, or the things that they've been trying to learn more about, and you
Yes.
can help them much faster.
100%. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So as you brought up a good topic, or a little segue in this conversation, and that's sales and marketing alignment. What do you think are some of the key pieces in, either assessing your sales and marketing alignment? First of all, let's talk about that, and then how you keep them aligned over time.
Yeah, that's a great question, David. So the way you want to assess the sales and marketing is, think about what happens when, let's say, when you look at the KPIs, right? Think about what are the KPIs that you're having marketing, that your marketing people are being held responsible for, right?
Mm-hmm.
Versus what are the KPIs that the salespeople are being held responsible for, right? And what happens when, what has been happening when, say, the quotas have been missed? What has been happening when the revenue targets have been missed, right? If you have this going on, where you
Yeah.
have marketing pointing at sales and saying, well, these folks in sales, they don't know. We've been giving them great leads, but they don't know how to close them, right? It's not our fault. We've done
Yeah.
our part, right? And sales goes, well, it was marketing has been giving us really crappy leads, and
Yeah.
what are we going to do, right? You give us these kinds of leads, these are not qualified, these
Yeah.
are wrong, they're the wrong industry, or they're not, they don't meet our they don't meet our requirements as a sales accepted lead, and that's all they give us. And so marketing is just, it's because of marketing that we're not meeting the target.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so what you want to do is really, you want to have alignment between sales and marketing in terms of, okay, what are our goals? Who are we going after? What does that look like? What does the ideal customer profile look like? Let's agree on that. Let's agree on who we're going to be going after. Let's agree on what types of information assets we're going to produce to go after that. Like, you want to have marketing and sales, having periodic meetings where they're talking about what types of campaigns are we going to be running, right? And who are we
Yeah.
targeting for these kinds of campaigns, right? What is the type of content we're producing for this, right? And there needs to be constant dialogue where sales is like, this is what we're hearing from prospects, right?
Yes.
I think it would be helpful if you produced, like, for instance, this type of checklist I think that would be really helpful, right? So you're having this constant dialogue, and marketing is also assessing, okay, how, when they're producing these MQLs, or what we call marketing qualified leads, what's going on with those leads, how many of those leads turn into what we call sales qualified, sales
Mm-hmm.
accepted leads, and then SQLs, or sales qualified leads, right? And really assessing the changes in terms of what happens to a lead over time, and trying to figure out, okay, what sources are producing the best leads, what type of content are these leads
Mm-hmm.
consuming, right? And which of these leads turn out to be our best customers, right? And how can we get more of those, right?
Yeah.
So there's constant integration, there's constant communication,
Yeah.
right? And it's working like a well-oiled machine. That's the way, in an ideal world, that's the way every organization would be working, but most really don't work that way.
Yeah. That you bring up a bunch of great points in there. First of all, I think that um, most, if people haven't done a lot of B2B marketing, they don't understand it's a lot of trial and error, even if you know your ideal client well.
Yes.
But when you have that alignment between your sales and your marketing people, and there is that feedback loop, and there is that, first of all, I'm amazed at how many B2B marketers go out and market without talking to the salespeople first at all. It's like, we need to, okay, we know our buyer, we're going to do this. And then we don't even, as marketers, they don't go and say, okay, what are your most frequent questions? What are
Yeah.
your biggest pain points that you hear people talking about? Just some of the simple things, because that at least gets you down the road that far with what they're seeing in the field. But
Exactly.
then that constant feedback that you talked about, I think it really can, when you get the teams working together, because you made a great point. What happens when a target is missed? And if the fingers are pointing at each other in this, we don't have the alignment, because everyone should feel the same sense of urgency to hit our targets. It's
Exactly.
either yes, we could have maybe not had the best qualified leads going to sales. Maybe we didn't have enough. Maybe we had way too many qualified leads and we didn't have a good sales process.
Right.
It all comes together, that when the sales and marketing works together, the customer has a better experience. They're educated at a higher level and makes a more informed choice,
Mhm.
which really, in the end, like you said, people don't want to be sold to, but they do like to buy. So if they
Yes.
make a good informed choice, people will feel good about buying from you. And
Exactly.
that missed interaction there is a key point, I think, that a lot of B2B companies miss.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well said, David. Yeah.
Cool. So you talk a lot about buyer psychology in what you write, you've got some background in that.
Mhm.
Talk about that just a little bit, because it's something I don't think people spend enough time on in B2B, is really understanding that.
Yeah, that's a great point, Damon. So I've always been fascinated with human behavior and what drives human behavior, to the extent that not only did I, do a lot of research on the psychological aspects of human behavior, I went to the level of learning the cognitive aspects, which is to say, how do our brains actually work, right?
Yeah.
And I've been really totally fascinated with the brain for a very, very long time now. And, it's essentially what it comes down to is that, and this is something that in B2B, most people don't even think about it because they don't think it's relevant. But at the end of the day, the reality is that we are all emotional beings, right? We all, make decisions on the basis of how we feel about things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And people might say, well, that makes sense for B2C, right? Walk in the store, you see something you like, and packaging looks pretty, you buy it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, even in B2B decisions, right, the emotional aspect plays a huge role, right? Most people think, well,
Yep.
people are making it's a B2B decision, so therefore, there's a lot of money involved. It's buying a sophisticated type of solution, so there's a lot of critical thinking and all that. While that does happen, right, you can't ignore the emotional aspects at play here, right? And what do I mean by the emotional aspects at play, right? What I mean is that think about the person that you're selling or the people that you're selling to, right? What are their interests? Because we all have our own interests, right? Not just in terms of the business, but our own personal interest, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's based on how we emotionally feel about what's important to us, right? And if we as sales and marketing people are not tapping into that, right, then we're totally missing the boat, right? And when you think about it, when somebody is going to evaluate you or your company, a lot is going to come down to as well, not just the information that you provide, but how do they feel about you? How do
Mm-hmm.
they feel about your company, right? You can make all the fancy claims you want about how great your solution is, or it can reduce operating expenses by 30%. It can increase revenue by 200%, right? You can make all those fancy claims, right?
Mm-hmm.
But how much of that they believe or what they believe is going to depend on not only the level of the credibility that they perceive in you, okay, which
Yeah.
also has an emotional component to it, right?
Yep.
But overall, how do they feel about you? How do they feel about your company? Have they been burned by a company, but by, for instance, even your company before, right? Have they had a negative experience with their company, which that's going to leave a bad taste in their mouth,
Yeah.
right? So how are you
Yeah.
going to overcome that, right?
Yep.
Have they been burned before with other companies buying similar big complex solutions that were proclaimed to do all these great things, and
Yeah.
then when they bought it, it was like, well, nobody ended up using it. It turned out not to do what they said it could do, right? So people are wary of being burned, right?
Yeah.
And so we have to understand that. We have to understand that from a human emotional level, right? That's where the rubber meets the road. Is when we're interacting with these people. It's the human to human interaction.
Mm-hmm.
Just as an aside, that's why I call my business HFactor Solutions, because it comes down to the human factor, right?
Yes.
It's a human element that plays a huge role in terms of our performance in sales and marketing, as well as in terms of our interactions with buyers, even in B2B companies. Because at the end of the day, we are all emotional beings, right? Some of us
Yes.
might be better at using our logical faculties, but the emotional element is always going to play a role. And so what I say is when I train salespeople, I just say, you got to remember, right? Speeds and feeds and all of that, return on investment, that's all well and good, right?
Yeah.
But what you really want to be doing is you want to sell to the heart, not just to the head, right? You got to sell to the heart, not just to the head, right?
Yep. Sell to the heart, not just the head. Yeah, that's a great point. Because it is emotional. It doesn't matter if, you can be buying a consumer product that, yes, it may be a little bit more emotional, but I can tell you that from watching it happen, people can go out and buy $1 million piece of equipment, and there's a lot of emotion in which one they buy, because you have
100%.
three different choices on something, and it's like, oh, that just, it comes down to that in the end. The select.
Exactly. And people underestimate the need that people have for psychological safety, right? Because if they feel like, what if I, you spend this much on this thing and it goes south, right? Then, how am I going to look in terms in front of
Yeah.
my peers, right? I'm
Yes.
going to look in terms of who I report to. And, ultimately, my job could be on the line, right?
Mm-hmm.
And as salespeople, we need to be able to tune into that and understand
Yeah.
that there's that level of emotionality that goes into it. And while for a buyer, so this is the other critical perspective that a lot of salespeople lack, is that you as a salesperson might be selling these things every day. Like you're involved.
Yeah.
This is your life.
Yeah.
Like you've probably sold hundreds of these things,
Yep.
right? But for the buyer, if they're buying your widget for the first time, right? Or it's been 10, 15 years since they last
Yeah.
bought it, right? This is not a decision they make every day,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's all new to them, right? And you have to understand that it can be a very anxiety
Yes.
producing type of experience for them, because they don't know what you know,
Yeah.
right? They're not sure how well it's going to work out. They're not sure if they're making the right decision, right? And
Yeah.
and your job really needs to be to give them that comfort, that confidence, right? And in some cases, take them by the hand and show them it's going to be okay. We're going to get there. We're going to get through this, right? We're
Yeah.
going to get it done. We're going to get you to the promised land.
Yeah, that's a great point in it, because a lot of these people that are doing buying, especially in some of the technical industries like manufacturing, even if you're an engineer and you're buying something and you're specifying and buying, you still have selection, different choices. Or if you're a buyer, that's even, I think, a little more stressful sometimes, because they don't have the technical understanding of where does this go? What are the key things that I get a piece of paper or an electronic file that says, I want you to go buy 1 million of these, and it might cost $10 million to do it. And they don't have any technical understanding. So they're trying to select, who do I get that from? How do I get, I mean, you put yourself in that buyer's shoes and that buyer's position.
Yes.
That could make the difference between them having a job 6 months from then or not.
Exactly. 100%.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Good stuff. Well, Humza, it has been awesome talking to you today, and really getting to learn from you about critical B2B sales systems and processes. So if someone wants to talk to you, wants to reach out and discuss their sales or just what you're doing, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
The best way to reach out to me is through LinkedIn. Just connect with me on LinkedIn. You can follow me, connect with me. That's Humza Adam, Humza, last name Adam. Reach out. I'm always happy to connect.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I just want to thank you for being here today. And again, we had Humza Adam here today. We were talking about critical B2B sales systems and processes. Humza's been in the sales coaching and sales industry for a long time with HFactor Solutions. And he's on LinkedIn, as he said. Reach out to him, have a chat, and see if he could be a right solution to help you to improve your sales. Now, I always like to say this. We love the listeners out there. I see we've got people listening. If you got into this late, go back to the beginning and listen to Humza from the beginning. He dropped a lot of golden nuggets early on. And we were talking about marketing, the interaction with sales. We were talking about the human factor and the emotional factors in sales, and some of the critical points as a B2B company you're going to look at in your sales process. So, Humza, thanks for being here today.
And thank you, Damon. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, we're going to wrap up now. Humza, hang out and we'll finish up offline.
Sounds good.